Good morning. Welcome to the Little Home Church by the Wayside. As we gather here in this sacred and historic space, we come together to celebrate the remarkable journey of a life lived with passion and grace. In this sacred moment of remembrance, let us find solace in the collective embrace of each other, cherishing the indelible mark left by a soul who touched our lives in myriad and beautiful ways. We stand at the crossroads of grief and gratitude. We come together to honor the life of Mary Jean Schless, a force of nature, a beacon of love, kindness, and resilience. As we navigate through this sea of emotions, may we find comfort in the tapestry of memories woven by threads of joy, love, and countless beautiful moments. As we commence this service, let us hold on to each other, forming a circle of love that echoes the warmth and beauty of Mary Jean's spirit. Please join me in the call to worship found in your bulletin. It is based on a favorite scripture passage, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal.
If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing.
If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I am nothing.
Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails.
But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put the ways of childhood behind me.
Now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known.
And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Please stand if you are able and join in the singing of For All the Saints found in your bulletin this morning.
To the world
At this time, we're going to have some family reflections, and I believe Anne is going to get us started here this morning.
Let's get it out of the way right now. Maybe. Hello. Or as I often heard on the other end of the line, hello, hello. My name is Anne Bouchard. That's not sad. Actually, it is for some people on the other side of my family. But anyway, I am the eldest of Mary Jean and Bob's daughters. Mary Jean Gray Schless was born in Bayonne, New Jersey on October 27, 1933. She grew up in Upper Montclair, New Jersey, the older sister to my Uncle Alan. Mom attended Swarthmore College, where the novels of Charles Dickens were her focus. In them, the full spectrum of humanity was on display. Once, when she and I were talking about being English majors, I asked her why she had chosen that course of study. She said that by reading novels, she didn't have to personally make the mistakes that the characters had. She could simply learn from their misfortune. Mom and Dad were married on November 19, 1955. They built their house in Wayne in the late 50s, and it was almost completed by the time I came along. During the long ride to the hospital in Chicago, my mother proclaimed, "There better be stairs to the second floor when we come home." And so there were. Mom held everyone to high standards. After her father died, my grandmother moved from New Jersey to live with us. By the time the moving truck was unloaded, it was early evening, and the moving men were invited to stay for dinner. We were all seated around the table, and as the meal started, Mom noticed that the men's napkins were still on the table. "Napkins in your laps, girls," came her reminder, and the men subtly complied. Though my mom was not always on time, my mom did not waste time, and many hands make light work. If there happened to be a pair of two inactive hands around, Mom wouldn't hesitate to promote their participation in whatever needed to be done. Neighbor kids, high school boyfriends, even a delivery person or tradesman, no one was exempt from service. A classic story about our mom's ability to ensnare the most unlikely helpers happened when one of us was having a birthday party. Probably someone was turning 2 or so, and some element of the house was still under construction. Plumbers from A.J. Lowe and Company were on the premises on the day of the party. When the invoice arrived for whatever work had been accomplished, it included an additional item, blowing up balloons, no charge. Sometimes Mom's insistence upon maintaining standards or traditions was met with pushback. From a young age, any protestation of, "I don't want to," was countered with, "It's not a question of want, it's a question of do." How does one respond to that? You couldn't. You just did whatever it was. On one occasion, when my mom was prepping for a party, trying to stake a meandering plant, or fussing with something that most people would have deemed irrelevant, who knows, my dad, not a man for home and yard, was apparently not giving it his all as the helper. "Bob, are you going to help me, or are you going to stand there and be an asshole?" After a pause, my dad replied, "Well, I think I can do both." And the story lives on. Humor could always win the day. My parents joined this church in the early 60s and have been members ever since. They have been teachers and lay leaders over the years, and my mom also served as confirmation teacher and mentor to many young people. Mom was so connected to the goings-on at church that at one point a friend's son saw my mom walking up to their front door and called out, "Here comes the girl who owns the church." My mom taught me about responsibility, service, commitment, and hospitality. She modeled the energy and thoughtfulness required to bond and maintain a family and a friendship. Mom instilled in me the importance that tradition plays in creating a stable environment for children, while at the same time encouraging creativity and self-expression. Mom also pushed me to tamp down my judgmental tendencies and proceed with grace. Yesterday's daily devotional from the United Church of Christ ended with a quote from St. Augustine: "Love God and do whatever you please." This moral command seemed to come straight from my mom, who, in her own way, has given me a similar template for life. Set the bar high in all areas, then do whatever you please. In recent years, our mom took to referring to me as our captain, which in turn led to others to also refer to me, perhaps with a hint of sarcasm, as our captain or the captain. Doctor visits, guest lists, menu choices, mobility issues, gift ideas and purchases, and other miscellaneous fields of responsibility were soon relegated to our captain. Did I ask to be our captain? Did I choose to be our captain? Did I want to be our captain? Well, it's not a question of want. Thanks, Mom. I enjoyed the doing.
I'm Mary Roach, the second daughter. As a child, I said to my mother, "Am I your favorite?" She said, "Well, I did name you Mary." Never told. No. Mom was frugal. Anything with a possible half-life was saved. We ironed tissue paper, pre-enjoyed ribbons. At birthday parties and holidays involving gifts, my mother cried, "Save the paper!" The attic housed her gift box stash. Boxes from defunct stores, such as Bonwit Teller, were especially prized. Those from Marshall Fields were beloved for their sturdiness and versatility. A TJ Maxx bargain might appear to come from Bergdorf Goodman. "Don't trust the box" became a familiar refrain. Just like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, some treasured boxes were stacked too close to a bare light bulb, causing smoke to billow into the sky. The firemen saved the house, but they drenched the attic. After substantial roof repairs and carpet replacement, box collecting resumed. Frugality was Christ-like at the rummage sale. Susie Winquist remembers being asked to iron linens for the sale. In the interest of the church, Mom priced things high. She courted buyers and was the top saleswoman in the boutique. But my earliest memory is of weeding the patio behind our house. I had just learned to sit up, but I was still in diapers. My tiny fingers were perfect for pulling the green shoots wedged between the tightly laid stones. I do remember the four of us as children, strategically placed across the patio, sometimes sitting on towels due to the heat. Crouched over, we pulled whatever twisted stems we could from the sandy rows between the huge pieces of slate. Day after day after day. "I don't want to weed the patio," we'd whine. "It's not a question of want, question of do," was her answer. "Shake off the dirt, save the dirt," she'd say. Always frugal. Early on, Dad energetically chainsawed a live Mugo pine tree. This tactical maneuver permanently barred him from any sort of yard work. Over time, Mom's garden became more sophisticated. A very boring petunia border was replaced by much more rewarding perennials. Coral and magenta peonies stood with sapphire-colored iris. A fragrant, cream-colored clematis cloaked the stone wall, and lemon yellow roses did their best. Plenty of spring bulbs urged the arrival of spring, and just this week, a single brave crocus bloomed. By the time we were in middle school, and with a look to the future, our red playhouse was replaced by a kidney-shaped area later called the wedding garden. Graceful, fast-growing silver maples were planted nearby, providing shade for 7 future family weddings. July dates were favored when the garden was at its peak. Countless hours and days have been spent by Mom, the 4 of us, her 8 grandchildren, and her many teen yard boys, making the garden a masterpiece. Mom was really hooked on daylilies. She researched cultivars for specific names, such as Mary Todd, and then Dan Taw, Peter something, and Mary Alice Stokes. As husbands and grandchildren came into the fold, she found more named daylilies and planted families together. Importantly, each daylily was unique, with differing heights, shapes, bloom times, and colors. Mom knew where everyone was, and we were all nearby each other in the same section of the garden. Quite the metaphor for where our close relationships are today. I'll get there. Often we toured the garden, walking arm in arm with Mom. This year, as the season ended and the weather cooled, we used the transport chair more. And always the house was full of flowers, either cut from her garden or one of ours. On my parents' 68th anniversary, I've read this like 85 times. Okay. Whoops. On my parents' 68th anniversary this fall, they received a spectacular bouquet from Mako in Japan. Mako was a foreign exchange student who by chance lived with us during high school and has stayed in touch for almost 50 years. The magnificent arrangement right here by the choir loft was sent by Morgan, probably Morgan too, was sent by Mako. Of course, Mom was naturally passionate about gardening. Her life was all about growing, being your best, making life beautiful, and shaping, never pruning, the lives of everyone in her orbit. Gardening can be heavenly. Mom will be right next to me, listening to and guiding me always, but especially when I'm in my garden.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being with us here today. I'm Jane, number 3. I'm going to talk a little bit about inheritance, but first I want to clear up one common yet significant misconception. I did not inherit my curly hair from my mother. My mother religiously permed her hair every 8 weeks for as long as recorded time. She avoided being outside with even the slightest hint of rain because I pay for my hair. Sorry for that big reveal, Mom. As unfathomable as it may be, Caroline and I got our curls from our dad. So, as we read earlier, the scripture tells us that without love, we are, well, toast, basically. My mother always led with love, whether that was obvious or not. Of course, I didn't always see it that way when I was growing up. For example, I didn't love having to invite my junior high arch nemesis to my birthday party, but Mom's motto was include, widen the circle, widen the circle. And I didn't love picking up trash along Dunham Road on a cold fall day with cars and trucks whizzing by, but it's not a question of want, it's a question of do. And I didn't love that she had a boyfriend of mine arriving at the house for our first date, vacuum the stairs. Though, while it may be a bit mortifying, it seemed perfectly normal at the time. I mean, everyone's mother puts visitors to work the moment they walk through the door, right? But those teenage annoyances of mine never festered long. My mother didn't hold grudges, and I wouldn't either, at least not against her. Later, in my 20s, I remember my mother and I discussing unconditional love and how to interpret someone in their best light. I listened, but it took me decades to put these lessons and concepts into practice, and I've always been in awe of how they came to her, seemingly with ease and confidence. One of the things I did inherit from my mother was the Little Home Church's Christmas pageant. My mother directed this annual beloved event for almost 30 years. Now that's some commitment. When Tim and I moved back to these parts in 1992, she asked me to help her with that year's production. And as you know, it's not a question. Right, so I attended the first rehearsal with my mother at the helm, and wow, it was sheer chaos. Had it always been this way? I couldn't recall. The last time I had been in the pageant, I was a self-absorbed teenager, but somehow she got those Gen Xers and millennials in line using her trademark, somewhat questionable, disciplinary tactic of threatening to kiss anyone who was misbehaving. Show of hands for anybody here today who actually got kissed. Oh, yes, I see a few. Yes. As unlikely as it sounds, kids actually knew that this was her shtick and were loath to test the system. Everything my mom did, she did 150%. So this was really a genius move because the kids knew she was serious. And even though it was a threat, she did it out of and with love. For my mother, the pageant was about letting every child have a moment to shine, however big or small the part. She would spend time with the shy shepherd by quietly giving the kid some backstory to help him get into character, whispering in the ear. Next thing you know, there's a 7-year-old boy practically creeping down the aisle because my mother convinced him that one of his sheep had injured his foot in some freak accident. When she handed me the reins in 1996, she said, "Each child must pass in full view of the parents at least once." She took time to get to know each kid, and as they grew, they eventually learned she was an advocate, not a foe. My mother had a long, beautiful, meaningful life. She was wise and funny and filled with love for life right up until her last breath. She is loved by many, and she influenced many in how life could or should be. When Sam died, people would ask my mother, "Why could that happen?" And she would respond, "Sam was a gift." Focus on how fortunate we were to have had him, if for only 18 years. She had a way of flipping the narrative and helping us all survive our hardest moments. My mother was a gift, and we are all beyond fortunate to have had her in our lives for such a long time. Thank you.
Okay, as you can probably guess, I'm the last 25%. Caroline Schless Andrews, hello. In our home, the dining room was where my mother shined. No matter time or day, we used the silver every night. "Why keep it hostage in a drawer? Use it," my mother would say. Accordingly, we were very familiar with the historical plates and china. "Be careful with that, you might inherit it one day." As children, we not only knew our way around a place setting, we had the consummate role model in my mother who showed us how to keep the conversation going. Around the dinner table, we discussed everything from what was going on at home to what was going on in the papers. It was there that my parents emphasized the importance of developing character, not being one. But they also valued the arts, music and theater especially. As many of you know, my mother played piano by ear, and of course we all played piano and other instruments. Music was a through line in our home, and practicing, of course, was the challenge. As you stumbled through another Bach invention, you'd hear "B flat" from upstairs. "Oh, Just in time, you'd think. Now try it again. Some of us came close, but I think my mom was the real musician because she did what music can do, bring people together. Though she hardly cooked, my mom could put a party together like nobody's business. Of course, the theme came first, then games, always a treasure hunt, singing around the piano, and of course, decorations and costumes. For my mother, celebrations were as essential to the family life as being part of a church community. They created meaning to our lives and traditions that not only defined us, but connected us to each other and to our place in the world. But in these parties, my mother accomplished more than celebrating. She showed us how to be generous, how to grow our imaginations, and to foster our life skills. My mother, as you've heard, was never shy about asking anyone to help out. Let's be clear, she loved a staff. Oh, we cleaned and polished and weeded and vacuumed and dusted. That is how she taught us how to run our own homes. As a kid, I remember thinking, how does this woman know what to do next? Why is there no end to these chores? And sure, you could try to abstain with the classic, Mom, I just don't want to do it, but then you'd hear her classic, it's not a question of want, it's a question of do. Now get in there and do what I ask you to do. As smart as we purported to be, really, none of us ever figured out how to argue with that one. Each time you'd get sucked in and think, I just get this stuff done, I will have some free time. Something we discovered she didn't really believe in for children. I mean, she had you working right up to the minute you had to run and get dressed, no time left for primping, no time to gaze into the mirror debating your beauty, which to her was another colossal waste of time. Beauty was so much more than looks. However, she did care what you looked like. Presentable was the word of choice. This was challenging with $4 to make the grade, but Bonwitz, not I Magnans. For her, the store of choice was Loehmann's. I was reared in Loehmann's, she'd say. For those unschooled, Loehmann's sold stylish clothing at discounted prices, but it also required confidence, chutzpah, just for the dressing room, which was a large mirrored space where all disrobed and robed together. But then she struck gold. Now listen up, because we were all sworn to secrecy for years about this scam. From outfitting the house and taking trips to the showrooms at the Merchandise Mart in Chicago, she found out that workers from the Mart could go into the apparel center across the street and buy samples very inexpensively. Samples are what the wholesale buyers look at, sample, as they say from the fashion industry, to purchase in bulk for the stores. Designers from all over the world had samples at the apparel center. With some East Coast savvy and some cash, my mother pretended she worked at the Merchandise Mart and got those designer samples on the cheap. On those trips, I had to call her Mary Jean. If we talked, and better yet, no talking at all. We just communicated with a lot of eyebrows and hand signals. One day, we were in Christian Dior's showroom, and for some reason, this dude says, ladies, today is special. Buy one, get one. And that is how I got my own Christian Dior gorgeous black bolero jacket and why my mother always looked good. She was not a jeans-wearing mother. Sweatpants were never in her vocabulary. I think in another life she might have been a designer, but she loved the quest of looking good on a dime, and when she pulled it off, which was most of the time, it felt a little magical. But it didn't stop there. Our birthday parties were, in a word, extraordinary. On your day of days, you'd come down the stairs bleary-eyed from all the work the day before, thinking, she's got to be nice to me now. It's my birthday, for God's sake. And there before your very eyes would be the miracle that made your jaw drop. The dining room transformed to reflect the theme of the party. When did this happen? Disco balls hanging from the ceiling, mylar tablecloth, colorful paper plates. I mean, if this was just the dining room, imagine what was else coming. And my friends, there was so much more coming. I first became aware of my mother's incredible imagination with my farm party. Maybe I was 6. For my farm party, I don't remember anything but the centerpiece, a small red barn with live chicks hopping around the center of the table. Live chicks. We were having our egg salad sandwiches while live chicks peeped and pecked all around the table. I do believe I love squeezed one of them to death by accident. And I know Tuffy, our cat, ate another one. But still, those chicks on the table, which was typically reserved for the silver and china, was my mother nuts? This was so unpredictable, so unexpected, and totally cool. Who was this woman? My famous couple's birthday, giant cardboard cutouts of famous couples were planted in the front pasture so I could see them out the window. And as guests came up the driveway, there was Laurel and Hardy, American Gothic, Lucy and Desi, greeting them. For my safari birthday, Sidney Lyon was employed to make papier-mâché giraffes. I can still see the giraffes out the back window of the house feasting on the leaves. Africa had come to wane. The magic my mother created was remarkable. For my Watergate birthday party, yes, of course, Watergate was an apt theme for a 12-year-old. Mom and Dad made these dummies that were part burglar/plumbers, which they attached to the gutters for every guest to see as they drove up, while my father met them at the door in a tuxedo as Howard Hunt, handing out hush money. I'm not sure all the girls knew, Heidi, what the hell Watergate was about, but I knew this was the hippest party in town because it involved the government, which seemed to be falling apart. As we got older, treasure hunts included transportation. Imagine 5 tween and giggly girls in a car with some out-of-their-league teenage boy, Christopher Madden. Where are you, Christopher? Somewhere out there. Chris Harling, Joe Lyon, recklessly driving us around as we try to decode these hilarious and challenging clues written by my mother to find a treasure, which turned out to be another guest for the party. And as we're gone on the road, Dad and Mom are serving Bloody Marys to the other moms back at the house. I mean, it was full service fantastic. Her inventiveness invited our imaginations to participate. She protected our childhood that way. And these elaborate parties gave us a safe place to dream and take a risk to trust our own creativity. Her love of theatrics extended to the community as well. October's my mother, Mrs. Bowl, Mrs. Fix would dress as green-faced witches and playfully terrorize each student as they paraded through the Wayne School gym in their Halloween costume. I remember thinking as a child, I thought there seemed to be some similarities between that one witch and my mother. But stop there, because who really wants to know your mother is a witch? But her tour de force were the annual Girl Scout plays, rehearsed and performed in the parish hall, which she directed. I don't know where she found these plays, but they always had a Western theme, and the women characters tended to be smarter than the men. Telling. Of course, everyone had a part, and there was no quibbling over girl or boy roles because we girls happily played all the parts. The highlight of these plays was the Friday night performance held exclusively for the fathers, after which a lasagna dinner was served. Under my mother and Mrs. Bowles' guidance, we scouts prepared pan after pan of lasagna and loaves of garlic bread in the church kitchens. Again, teaching us how to be hospitable. Don't just offer a play, give them dinner too. But the most endearing touch of the evening that was emblematic of my mother's sense of community was making sure if a Girl Scout had an absent father, there would be an attentive substitute father provided, such as Uncle Alan or Mr. Lyon, for example, so that each girl would feel celebrated and cherished. My mother's ability to see an individual, to support them where they needed support, was her superpower. But man, did she know how to have fun too. There were 4th of July parties where it seemed half the town was invited to our home, end of the year school picnics held at our house, wedding receptions besides our own, women's fellowship parties, and the Christmas pageant. Whatever the production, my mother cast the parts not according to talent, but according to emotional need. If there was a kid or an adult who needed a lift, they got the part. Or a part was created, employment was made, a place was set, confidence and support instilled. And when the time came to retire from the pageant, she didn't just pass it off to anyone, she passed it off to a daughter. Clara, you better watch out. My mom looked out for the ones on the outside. She demonstrated what the church calls an extravagant welcome every day, from picking up hitchhikers to making an extra place at the table for someone who had nowhere to go at Thanksgiving. And this welcome was not only for my parents' contemporaries, but for our friends too. She taught us to look out for those who needed support and to show them a good time. We knew if we asked, anyone would be welcome to come, but they might have to run a vacuum, put on a costume, or be willing to drive a bunch of giggly girls around. All of my sisters, we love a party, and our best days are when there are extra places set and we can practice the same hospitality and generosity and creativity and love she showed us every day.
Hello, everybody. My name is George Bouchard, and I'm the oldest of Mary Jean's 8 grandchildren. As I was preparing my words for today and reflecting on anecdotes, it was difficult to focus on any one specific story, simply because there's so much to talk about. As my mom and my aunts have already recounted, Nana was and is an indelible figure who will seamlessly live on through our many memories of her and the countless traditions and life lessons that she left to us. For as long as I can remember, Nana showed up. She showed up to soccer games, tennis matches, theater performances, and piano, choir, and violin recitals, not to mention all the birthday parties in between. All right. Not emotional man. This long-term dedication was present throughout my life and the lives of my cousins. I'm lucky to have many memories with Nana. I've come to learn that it is not common to be fortunate enough to have grandparents who are as involved as my grandparents have been. At any given opportunity, Nana was there, ready with an encouraging smile and high praise. No place seemed to be out of reach for her. My wife, Leah, first met Nana while we were both still attending college in Richmond, Indiana. Although it may shock and awe many in the audience from looking at my stature, I was part of a rugby team in college. I think we played maybe 3 matches total, one of which was attended by my mom and Nana. They came for the day to watch me run away from guys 100 pounds heavier than me, and Leah was surprised they drove all the way to Richmond, a 4.5-hour drive, just for a rugby game, an intramural rugby game. But that's who Nana was. She celebrated us at every opportunity, and she did so underpinning expectation. It was genuine, unconditional love. After Leah had left, Nana, demonstrating her keen insight and love for matchmaking, commented to my mom, "I think that girl is interested in George." And indeed she was. Our son, Henry, was born 1.5 years ago, and we've brought him out to the compound, the designated name of the Schless family home, as much as possible to spend time with Nana and Appy. I was recently watching videos from one of our visits, and Nana's encouraging voice can clearly be heard in the background. "Oh my, wonderful job. Oh my goodness, yes." From the audio alone, you might expect to see Henry doing a handstand or walking on stilts, when in fact, he was simply raising his arms over his head. But because Nana was so very proud of him, so was Henry. As a young person, you hopefully gradually learn to believe in yourself by reflecting and learning from your own personal successes and struggles. Of course, outside reinforcement helps immensely when it comes to burgeoning self-confidence. It's an incredible gift to be so wholeheartedly encouraged. We're very lucky Nana has instilled this in our family, a tradition of celebrating others and never competing with them. If she believed you did something extraordinary, so did you. And Nana's encouragement was limitless. Of all her magical abilities, I have come to believe there is one chief among them. She was able to make you feel like you've been the only person in the world she's been thinking about. When she was with you, when she saw you, no matter how long or short it had been since your last talk with her, she would look at you with a wide, glowing smile and always ask, "How are you, dear?" And you knew she really wanted to hear how things were going. In the words of Simone Weil, attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Nana was generous with her attention and with her love. She was always conscious and attentive to not only those that she had known for decades, but to new acquaintances as well. She knew what everyone in her social life was up to, not just her immediate family, but the families of her sons-in-law, the children and grandchildren of her friends, the friends of her grandchildren, her neighbors, their families, her hairdresser, and her family. The list goes on. And all of this makes clear how much she loved each of us. She must have been thinking about each of us all the time, which tells us far more about her than it does about us. We are all here today in acknowledgement that life is both beautiful and finite. As the poet Mary Oliver wrote, "Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" I believe these words are so often evoked because they inspire us to action, with the reminder that our time is limited. They remind us that the time is the most valuable thing we have. Nana gave us her time and undivided attention to those around her. Through her long conversations that garnered her the endearing nickname Gabby in high school and in college, which also earned her chastising from her elementary school teachers, to her unbridled work ethic, to her tended garden, to her thoughtfully curated parties for her children. She gave her time to her church community through her dedication to the pageant and maintained community through tradition and celebration. She gave her time and attention to grandchildren through her very presence. It is the loss of that presence that we feel so deeply. It is that presence that we will miss so very much. But through this presence, she embedded herself into the fabric of our family, into all of us here today. We will continue to bear witness to those who may not always be seen and give our time and attention to others because of her love. Thank you.
Hi. My name's Tim. I'm married to number 3. I'm going to read just Bob's recollections and thoughts on beloved Mary Jean. 72 years is a long time to know and love someone. Mary Jean and I met at a bridge table at Swarthmore, and the rest is history. We married just after she graduated and decided to build our house in Wayne and raised our family here. We didn't waste time with either task. In a short time, Anne, Mary, Jane, and Caroline came along. Mary Jean and I were solid partners. We solved our problems, made decisions about our children, our home, and even my business with each other, always together. Mary Jean and I were blessed to have 4 lovely and talented daughters who had the ability and foresight to find and marry 4 equally outstanding unique and delightful husbands. I could go on. Soon, excuse me, we had 8 grandchildren and now 1 great-grandson. Over time, we made many lifelong friendships with too many memories and laughs to count. Throughout our lives, our bond was steadfast. Beyond our family, Mary Jean's heart influenced hundreds of lives. We will all carry her love on to hundreds more.
As our Aunt Caroline alluded to, Nana loved the arts, loved fostering performances with her grandchildren, and often at any number of these parties, it may have been a birthday, it may have been a President's Day party, because there was a party for everything. A performance element was usually part of it from whoever in the family happened to be working on a new piece or a dance or something like that. So we are going to perform for you a hymn, lullaby, that she really enjoyed.
At this time, I'm going to call up Jane, Patty, and Andy, who have some tributes prepared for Mary Jean. So if you three will come forward at this point, and we'll have you speak from the pulpit here. And then after that, we will have a time if anybody else would want to share a remembrance of Mary Jean. Our ushers will have some microphones down here on the floor that you may come up. And if you are in the parish hall watching us in the overflow room, you're welcome to come across the courtyard as well and up to the front of the church then. So I believe we're going to start with Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Huth-Walsh. I want to thank the Schless family for letting me share with you what, I'm not going to get through this without crying, Mary Jean meant to me. I met Mary Jean Schless 62 years ago when I was 3 years old. Anne and I were classmates at the Farmer in the Dell Nursery School here in Wayne. Little did I know back then the effect that Mary Jean would have on the course of my entire life. When I was 14, my mother died. She'd been ill for my entire life and had moved out of our house when I was 11, essentially leaving me motherless. Mary Jean had 4 beautiful daughters to usher through adolescence. She didn't need another one, but somehow she found the time and energy to guide me through adolescence too. When I was in high school, I would show up nearly every day after school at the Schless's house, and I'd go down to the barn to ride Philly, who was a foal of one of Bob's polo ponies. I was never really invited, but Mary Jean never turned me away. Au contraire, she allowed me into her home and included me in outings, parties, dinners, shopping, whatever was going on with the Schless family. More often than not, she invited me to stay, to participate. Her kindness to me came out in many small, important ways, in particular in the encouraging comments she made to me about little things, my schoolwork, my singing, an outfit I'd chosen to wear, something I did or said that she liked and appreciated. I'm sure she did the same thing for many, many, many people, but no one else but Mary Jean did that for me. We all know Gabby Gray loved to talk, but more important, and certainly for me, she was a great listener. She was thoughtful, attentive, and curious. I was a shy, awkward teenager who really needed someone to listen to her. Mary Jean did, in the car and trips with the Schless girls to Lohman's, over lunch at the Schless's kitchen table, out on the patio, in the parish hall after church. And at least once a week, when my father was late picking me up, as he often was, Mary Jean would set another place at the dinner table, divide up the meal, and invite me to stay. Now, dinner at my house was a mostly silent affair, but dinner at the Schlesses, as many of you may have experienced, was a party every night of the week, with Mary Jean at one end of the table and Bob at the other and everyone else in between. The competition was fierce to tell and retell the funniest stories. Oh, Bob, tell that story again. Janie hasn't heard it. Around the Schlesses' dinner table, I learned what a great family and a great marriage looked like. I also learned how to have fun. As all of you know, Mary Jean loved to laugh. When someone asked her why she married Bob, she replied without hesitation, well, Bob was the funniest person I'd ever met. I don't remember the stories or the food, but I do remember the joy and laughter and never wanting it to end. I used to hate rainy days because I couldn't ride Philly, so I had to go home to a dark, empty house. What pulled me out of that darkness was Mary Jean. Her love and attention changed my life forever. It's no surprise that the first time I felt happy after my mother's death was on a warm summer afternoon 3 years later when I was riding Philly in the backyard of the Schless's house. A few weeks ago, when I visited Mary Jean for the last time, she asked about my husband and my children by name. She used to send them Christmas presents every year and books that they were interested in reading. Her ongoing interest in my life sustained me long after I needed to be cared for. But Mary Jean still cared. She was frail during that last visit, but she listened while I told her about my family. Her blue eyes focused on me, her smile, her voice, just the same. I cherish every memory I have of her. To Mary Jean, I owe my life and happiness, and I will miss her forever. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Sachs. I've been friends and part of the Schless family since I got married in 1981, so here I still am. Let me start, perhaps inappropriately, by saying I had a wonderful mother. Extraordinary, brilliant, smart, funny. She filled our family, 4 boys and 1 girl, 1 husband, with humor. She was totally laissez-faire. She was wise and loving. In many ways, she was a woman ahead of her time. Mary Jean was her complete opposite. So lucky me, I had the full gamut, the complete package of mothering. I got it all. Until I met Anne, and therefore the entire Schless family, I had no idea another family could be so delightful. I also didn't know a mother could be a manager or an expert. I learned about, in no particular order, gardening and the vital importance of soil, how to do and fix a marriage, 43 years, got a lot of advice, how to set a proper and elegant table, how to make and design and plan a flower arrangement, the importance of celebrations and parties for every possible occasion, how to raise a child and still have fun doing it, how to teach a child, how to manage worries about my kids. I called her one day with a lot of issues, and she said, "Don't fret about the immaturity of the younger generation." How to look at life with equanimity and positivity. You can fix it. You can do it. Also, I never knew about household management. Anne and Charles's wedding was my first real exposure to the power and beauty of her management skills. I was immediately given assignments. Make this phone call to Neiman Marcus and find out about an order. Put this floral arrangement on that table, then go get the vases and bowls and put them in the kitchen, and then go downstairs and get those foam things and put them in. Then come with me to go get the cosmos, bring the buckets, bring the bleach, bring the clippers, go get them in the garage, on and on all day. I had a laissez-faire mother. Do it yourself. Don't bother me. That's what's in my head from my mother. Anyway, lots of outings and instruction and information and the work. Mary Jean epitomized what a woman and a friend and a mother should be. As my son said, she was the queen of mothers. Always supportive, attentive, loving, strong, unfailingly understanding, calm, caring, fun. She had a talent for making every one of us feel perfectly remembered and special. She was the person I turned to for advice, and she was always exactly right. She respected my feelings and ideas. She thought hard about whatever issue I had or problem I was trying to solve. She paid close attention to my words, and I listened carefully to her. She embraced me and my family as a full part of her family. Mary Jean was the engine of this family. At first, when Anne told me she was gone, it felt like a pillar had fallen away and that my foundation was shaken. But then, I have since realized, no, her strength and wisdom and humor and guidance and advice will always be with me, propping me up and keeping me strong and happy and solid. When my mother died, Mary Jean sent flowers and an exquisitely written letter of condolence. She said, "Mothers should live forever." She said, and they do, for you know what she would say. You know what she would do, and therefore she will never be gone. So we will have Mary Jean with us forever, and that is her lasting gift to me and to us forever.
Thank you, and come again. It sounds like you've heard that one before.
My name's Andy Aronson. My wife Tina and I moved to Wayne in 2013, and we were blessed, if not very, very lucky, to live next door to the compound, as they call it. And the first people we met, we didn't know a soul when we moved to Wayne. First people we met was Bob and Mary Jean. They invited us over, and we got to know their whole family over the years. They got to the point where they would invite us over for Christmas Eve, Thanksgiving, and our favorite, cocktail hour on the patio. We were welcomed into their home, just as if we were their own grandchildren or children, or I'm getting a little older now, so probably children, right? I just want to say thank you to the Schless family for being there for us. They were wonderful, very, very wonderful people, as you all know. They should be very proud of the family that they've created over the years. So every time we would say our goodbyes, Mary Jean would say, thank you, and come again. I hope in the future, if you ever hear that, you think of Mary Jean. I certainly will, and I will miss Mary Jean very, very much. Thank you.
At this time, if our ushers will come forward with the microphones, and if there are others who would wish to pay a tribute right now to Mary Jean, this is the time to do that. Anyone else? Come on, just come right up forward to the microphone.
My name is Jeff Schrammick. My wife, Peg, and our two sons, Ted and Greg, were part of this community for roughly 30 years. We used to live in Bartlett. We've since moved out to Huntley, and we're not regular attendees, but we can still consider ourselves friends of the church and the Schlesses. I want to share with you, and this is totally off the cuff and extemporaneous, so I don't have quite the polish that what we've heard so far, but I want to share with you, and I'm not going to point out the obvious. You'll pick it up, about what Mary Jean did for one of our two sons who's here today, Ted. You try to raise your children to have the values that will aid them in growing up. Mary Jean did that. She had Ted, our oldest, as a yard boy. And as such, Ted learned, I'm sorry, I can't repeat it, but you all know what you just said about do versus want. Well, Ted learned the value, I think, of hard work. And there is also the idea of taking what you see and not cutting it, not pruning it, but shaping it. I want to emphasize that. So Ted started out, and back then he couldn't drive, so I hauled him over, drove up down the streets of Morocco, or whatever the term is, dropped him off and said, we'll see you later. And when it came time to pick him up at the assigned time, I was there, out in front, sitting in the car waiting. And while I'm sitting there waiting, I noticed the Taurus wagon driving around the back. And I said to myself, well, that's odd, it's driving around the back. I didn't think it was a, four-wheel drive, but who do I see driving it? Ted. I think at that time Ted was maybe 13. Well, that bothered me. I don't want to give him any more confidence than he already had. But Mary Jean didn't hesitate. Well, I waited for the car to be parked. The driver, underage, get out, walk into the house, came out the front door, opened the door to my car, and I sat and looked at him. What do you think I said? You want to drive? I don't remember his reaction, but I said, what was that? Oh, Mary Jean lets me do it all the time. Well, that made me think I need to have a chat with Mary Jean. Well, I did. I walked in the front door, and I wasn't angry. I was more concerned. Mary Jean, what are you thinking? Well, Ted didn't raise his arms over his head, but she did the same type of thing. He does a wonderful job, and he's an excellent driver. Mary Jean, he's not of age yet. Oh, what does that matter? He's only driving on our lot. What if he has an accident? Oh, don't worry. He's fine. Well, as he moved on and he got his own vehicle with the help of Mom and Dad, it was a pickup truck, had a cap on the back of it. And Mary Jean commissioned him to get whatever it was, landscape bark or shredded bark or whatever, mulch, filled up the back of that with a cap on. He is in there digging it out with a shovel, scrunched over and spreading mulch. And he was doing it enthusiastically. And that's part of Mary Jean's influence on one of our two sons. Now, our other one isn't here to defend himself, but he figured out very soon that Mary Jean was a tough taskmaster. And Mary Jean was also cognizant enough that maybe he wasn't quite like his older brother. But in any event, thank you, Mary Jean, for influencing our family.
And it's all right if you form a line here.
Christopher, one of my drivers.
Well, obviously, we're part of the Madden family. The Irish is coming out in me, Bob. We'll miss Mary Jean. Give you a little history. Bob and my dad were probably best friends. And the girls were like sisters to us over the years, till my sister came.
Yes. Then she was our sister.
That's true. But one of my favorite stories, and it's not completely a Mary Jean story, but it's a Schless story. Bob and my dad, for a while, they were buying used GSA cars. Oh, do you remember that? Yeah. And one day were coming down the driveway, and there's the blind corner there, and I think it was Bob and Mary Jean had a head-on. No one was hurt, but, ruined the cars. Well, the next thing that I remember is Mary Jean ended up with one of the cars painted with flames, and Mad Mary Jean, I think is what it said on it. Mean Mary Jean. Mean Mary Jean.
Bad Bob, big bad Bob.
Big Bad Bob, Big Mary Jean.
Painted it purple and put flames on it.
Yes. As I said, we'll miss her.
Christopher Madden, John Madden. I can attest more than firsthand to Mary Jean's ability to co-op, would be the proper word, individuals who were in residence at the Schless household. For years, Morgan McDonald's Jr. and myself were kind of the in-resident males, protecting Bob from the plethora of females in the house. And some of the things that we were asked to do, not asked to do, we're simply voluntold.
Yes.
Voluntold.
Yes, were interesting, and they built you as a character, as a person, and I'm the person I am part of because of what happened at the Schless household, and consequently with Mary Jean and Bob's tutelage. So she will be very, very missed by the Madden family in particular.
Thank you, Mary Jean.
Is this on? Hello, my name is Lee Beishe, and I'm part of the adopted grandchildren of Mary Jean. Nana had a way with words, each one intentional. Some of my favorite things she said were, after my mom told her I was training for a marathon, why? Every time I visited her after not seeing her for a while, she would grab my face and say, "Come to me, dear one." And each time I would tell her about something I was clearly proud of, even if she didn't fully understand it, like running a marathon, she would say, "Good for you." I didn't get to meet any of my own grandparents, but was lucky enough to be adopted by Nana and Appi and the whole Schless crew. To her grandchildren, thank you for sharing your gift of a grandmother with me. Like you, I will miss her dearly, but I hope that you, like I, will continue to hear her words and will give the love the way she did to all who need it.
I'm Ann McLaughlin, mother of Lee. And I have a couple of Mary Jean stories that I wanted to share. One involves Lee. So I got a phone call in my Naperville office many years ago of a hysterical child who had been in a hit and run. And I was 30 minutes away, and I said, okay, I'll get in the car right away. And the only person I thought to call was Nana. And I called and said, can you go to the Olive Garden and sit with Lee until I get there? And I remember pulling up, and as though I would get down on the bench, but it was like Nana and Lee were sitting on the curb, and Nana was leaning in, listening to Lee and the tale of this terrible hit and run. And there was never a question who I'd call. And then Lee reminded me that when it was time to go, I said, okay, well, you drive your car. And Nana said,
No, well, I said, I'm not doing that. And Anne said, no, you'll be fine. And Nana said, Anne, she doesn't want to.
So needless to say, we let Lee go home, and I went back and retrieved the car. One memory that I wanted to share was, it's like the opportunity to have had one-on-one time with Mary Jean. Many times we were surrounded, and O'Brien's fur store was closing, and she thought it would be a great idea that we could go shop together, and we did. And she knew Mr. O'Brien, and they were old friends, and I found a lovely leather jacket, and Mary Jean found this beautiful mink jacket. And then we met Bob and Lee at the club, and I just remember being startled when she pulled out a debit card to pay, and I was like, wow, she's got that much cash in her checking account. And we show up at dinner, and Mary Jean just said, oh, Bob, I bought a fur coat. And he said, yes, dear. I do think it should be mentioned here that one of the startling things about Mary Jean was every once in a while she would drop the F-bomb, and I gotta love that about her, But the last thing that I received from Mary Jean, other than a little Valentine's Day gift, was a Christmas gift of bulbs for a garden. And the gift of Mary Jean will live in my garden and bloom for me every year. And I think she knew that her life could be coming to an end. And we were blessed with 90 years of Mary Jean, and that's something to celebrate. You're very, very lucky, and we love you dearly.
Darlings, darlings. Okay. Hello, my name is Julia Gray. I am niece number 2. Dad, mom right there. I'm married to Ajit over here. I have so many, I have so many memories, but the main one, the funniest one, one of the funniest ones was I was underconfident kid in high school, and I was auditioning for, I think it was a Chekhov play or something, and I had to sing something. And so I was like, all right, Mom, do you know anything? She said, well, Aunt Mary Jean, talk to her, she knows. So I went up there, I think I was a sophomore or something, and what do I sing? She said, okay, you're gonna sing something from My Fair Lady. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and she's like, you're gonna sing it, try it in a Cockney accent. Okay, so she's, it was All I Want Is a Room Somewhere. I think that's from My Fair Lady, I don't really know. All I Want Is a Room Somewhere. And so I sang it normally. I don't have a great voice. My sister and my mom are blessed with beautiful singing voices. And so she's like, okay, now, you've seen the movie. Yes, I have, of course. I've seen the play. She's like, now I do it in a Cockney accent. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, okay, Uncle Bob, I think you were lurking around somewhere. And Aunt Mary Jean's on the piano, and I'm just like, okay, so of course, I'm not gonna sing it. Because I don't want to clear the church quite yet, and I want people to have a decent memory of me. But there were so many other stories, like, I learned to love horses thanks to Uncle Bob, and started riding when I was very, very little, 5 or so. And there were a few times when all my cousins and one of my sisters, and 2 of my sisters, we were all initiated into the world of horses with this one particular pony, Butsy, or Gingerbread Man. And I remember riding out in the field when I was a little bit older, a little bit more confident, the pony coming back alone, and me coming back about 5 minutes later, a little disheveled and beaten up, tears, of course. And Aunt Mary Jean would run, oh dear, oh sweetheart, give me a hug, and then Nanny was there too, and give me a hug, and you just have to keep going. You have to get on up and get back on the pony. No, yes. But another thing that I learned from my aunt was the love of Charles Dickens. I started reading him in high school, and I had to read him for I don't know, some honors English class, and it was Tale of Two Cities, which actually turned out to be one of my most favorite books. And I remember talking to her about it, and she just said, his words, Dickens' words are what did she say, jewels or something, and they were just so, his prose was one of the most lyrical and beautiful, and she was absolutely right. But we disagreed on Hemingway, because I'm not a fan. But those, I have so many memories of just, doing the Girl Scout pageant, the Girl Scout plays. Right, too many tears make the cheeks puffy, exactly. Knitting for our Christmas projects, and what else? I just can't. And I was Mary in the Christmas pageant, and she said, "You were the best Mary, but your Joseph was too smiley." And it was John Sheehan, who was a great guy, grew up here too. He was too up here like this, and here I was being the demure mother of Mary. But anyway, I know I feel like I should have something better prepared, but I just want to say. She was a second mother to me. Growing up in a small town with 3 sisters and then having 4 female cousins. And my mother, who's is amazing, and my dad, who was, I think, besides Uncle Bob, Aunt Mary Jean's favorite man. It was a gift. It was an honor. It was always love, and if there were disagreements, it was always handled well. But she was definitely a mainstay. She was a pillar. She was a when I lived in California, I would call her, and if I was having a bad day, we would talk, and it was just, she would calm me down. She would bring me back to earth. She would comfort me and remind me that, you know, you're loved. You have people who love you and support you, and that was it. So.
I'm going to make this brief because I know there's been a lot of talks, but I'm not going to try to make it funny because it's the way Mary Jean reached out to so many souls and made them feel so comfortable that I wanted to share it all with you. So about 12 years ago, after my husband died, the first Sunday I came back to church, I didn't want to come into this church without my husband because we sat right across the aisle from Bob and Mary Jean for 30 years. And I walked down the aisle, and Mary Jean turned her head, and she saw me coming, and she said, "Carol, you're with us." And I sat with them for the next 12 years. I don't know, 10, 12 years. And I'm telling you all this story because her legacy will continue to live on, and that's a legacy that we will bless other people as they need it, because Mary Jean blessed me and my family.
Hi, I'm India. I'm, I guess, one of the grand nieces of Nana, or Mary Jean. And I just wanted to say it really meant a lot to me and my siblings. You know, we weren't one of her grandchildren or Oppie's grandchildren, but we never felt any less loved or any less included. She always made sure to have our school pictures, you know, lined up in the kitchen right alongside everyone else's, even though, you know, we're actually from Montclair, which is, you know, where she lived and got married. We don't live around here. Oh, I'm very sorry. But I just wanted to come up here and say it really did mean a lot for us to be so included, and I can echo the sentiments of what everyone else said. She was an amazing listener. You always felt like you were really the only person in the world and you were talking to her. And honestly, some of my best childhood memories are with me and Ben, and Cor was a little too little at the time, but running around the Schless house, you know, the costume closet, dropping things down the laundry chute was always amazing. And I think part of the reason why that was so magical was because Nana just fostered the most amazing environment, and truly, you really could feel the love, and I mean that in the deepest sense of the phrase. So obviously I'll miss her a lot, I'm sure all of us were, and yeah, I just wanted to say that and acknowledge that because it meant a lot to me.
Hello, I'm Mary Alice, 8 grandchildren. Nana was and will always be, my favorite person in the world. I think the way that she loved, I think as a human being, all we ever want to do is feel loved and heard and seen. And that's what she did for everyone. She took the time to get to know you and see you in a way that I don't know I have experienced outside of it. There's so many stories I could tell, but I think one of the things that sticks with me is that I didn't realize how special our family was until I moved to college. She taught me that that's, you know, inviting people in is the way that you have that family. And sorry, my words are not polished either. I didn't expect to say anything, but the way that she included others and the way that she did it without a second thought, because it was the right thing to do. She taught me to always do what was right, not for the sake of hey, look, I did what was right. It was for the sake of doing it, because it was the right thing to do. That unconditional love is not for show. It's quiet, and it's just who you are, and it's graceful. She was probably the most graceful person I've ever met in my life. And I think moving forward in my life, I'm only 25, but my greatest wish is that I create an environment and create a group of people who were touched in the ways that she was able to touch and love others. Yeah.
I'll invite everyone to stand if able and sing In the Garden. You may be seated. As Henry VIII said to all of his wives, I won't keep you long. What an extraordinary and authentic tribute to Mary Jean today. It is clear from all of the words spoken that Mary Jean's actions were suited to her words. Over the past several years, I've had the privilege of popping in now and then to see Bob and Mary Jean at the house, sometimes together in the den, sometimes outside in the patio, sometimes they were in separate rooms and visiting individual. Whenever I saw Mary Jean, she always began the conversation with, "Dear, I hear things are going so very well at the church. I'm not surprised and very pleased." She loved this place. I assured her we were doing our best to keep the place going without her here in person, And her example of enthusiasm and love for the little home church was our model. I used to refer to her as the prophet. Through her words, she always reminded me a bit of a character played by the talented actress Ruth Gordon in the 1971 cult classic Harold and Maude, one of my absolute favorite movies. Harold, a young man in his 20s, fascinated and infatuated with dying, and Maude, almost 80, just infatuated with life and love. There's a wonderful set of lines in the movie when Harold says to Maude, "You sure have a way with people," and she simply responds, "Well, they're my species." Mary Jean saw all of us here as her species, and she wanted us to be connected in a way that would make all of us better for having known each other. She was impeccable with her words, and I was always in awe of her vernacular and her vocabulary. And there's only one time I can recall when her words saddened me. It was a Wednesday night after choir practice. I was probably 3 years into the job of being music director organist here. And after the rehearsal, she pulled me aside and said, "Dear, you're doing a magnificent job, but I'm stepping away from the choir." I was devastated to think it was under my watch that Mary Jean Schless left the choir. She immediately followed up with these words, "Of late, I have 5 notes at best, not one of them worth listening to." She'll be missed, and I think in some ways we all find ourselves this morning hovering over number 2 on the wall to my left. Blessed are they who mourn. No one in this room or within the sound of my voice understands that more than Bob after 68 years of marriage. It will not be easy, but hopefully in time, everyone here will find their path through this loss, and love will melt into memory and pain into song, as the great Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore wrote in his poem, The Gardener. And the end of Harold and Maude, when she's dying, in the closing scene, Harold utters the words, "I love you, Maude." Probably the first time in Harold's life he ever said the words, "I love you." Maude smiles after hearing Harold's words. It seems as though her task was done and she set out to do what she intended to do. And she simply responds with this, "Good. Now go and love some more." And that's what we're all tasked with here today. From Mary Jean, to go and love some more. Amen? Please pray with me. God of tears, mysterious silence, God of suffering and God of hope, you have made for everything a season. This is the season of sorrow, of grief, and we pray for grace to deal with what may seem impossible to deal with. We remember the promise made to those who mourn, yet at times it seems that comfort is beyond our grasp. We know that we cannot bear this burden alone. Should we pray for our grief to be transformed? Or is it the purpose of our grief to transform us? Will our sorrow lead somewhere unexpected? Might it lead us back to life if we follow it? Is it a reminder of the precious reality of life and of love? The death of Mary Jean has created an empty space within our lives, a great longing within our hearts. Will it ever be filled? Will sacred memory heal us? and make her a part of our lives forever. So many questions, O God, and at times, so much silence. We hold before you today our brother Bob, our sisters Anne, Jane, Mary, and Caroline, and their families, Mary Jean's brother Alan and his family. And today we remember those who preceded her in death, particularly her grandson, Sam. Comfort them. Comfort them through us. Comfort them through each other. May we be patient toward all that is unanswered in our hearts, and may others be patient with us, with our sorrow, our anger, our fear, our questions. We are those who mourn this day. We seek the comfort that we can offer each other and the blessings of divine love and divine grace. We pray all of this, O God, knowing you are hearing us far better than we are speaking. We pray this as a community of faith in all the many and holy names of God, and we offer these prayers today in the name of the one who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm lies a golden sky, and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, and you'll never walk alone. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never
Hi, I am Phil Andrews, son-in-law number 4, married in this very church. And I remember when Carolyn and I were getting ready for the big day, we met with the pastor at the time, who was from Maine and maybe a little less extravagant than the family I was entering into. And at the end of the consultation, he turned to me and asked, "Aren't you worried that this wedding is going to be too Schlessy?" Not at all. This is called Nana's table. Preparations were considerable. Delegation, essential. Silver, glassware, china, linen, candles, all were set. Place cards positioned strategically. Flowers arranged, always fresh. Vibrant as the extended family of daylilies in her wedding garden, and the warm smile that never failed to reach her eyes. Then dressing, perhaps a dresser, and downstairs again to welcome us, everyone. Family, friend, stranger, and spontaneous guest alike, to her table. So she raised us up, creating environments where conversation, celebration, commiseration, and growth could take place. Grace was a given. Food and drink important, but secondary. Vessels, as they are in every communion, to help transport us somewhere more sacred and generous, where we share all we have, all we are, knowing at last that nothing is ours to keep. Everything must go to those who will replace us. It's what all great traditions are about, but hospitality is our greatest, hers especially. An exuberant threading together of lives, those long gone, those not yet conceived of, and our own. Looking forward to a time when all of us truly become what she saw in us and forever promised we already were. Perfect in every way.
Following the commendation and benediction, I'll ask everyone to remain seated while the family first recesses out to Claire de Lune, which I will play for you. And then everyone may exit as well and greet everyone down at Denhamwood's Riding Club after the service is ended. Mary Jean Schless, we have honored your life today, and we will continue to do that. But you are no longer bound by this world, no longer tied to just one place or one time. You are free. Go now with all of our love, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And may the sun bring you energy every day, bringing light into the darkness of your souls. May the moon softly restore you by light, bathing you in the glow of restful sleep, peaceful dreams. May the rain wash away your worries and cleanse the hurt that sits in your heart. May the breeze blow new strength into your being, and may you believe in the courage of yourself. May you walk gently through the world, keeping Mary Jean with you always, knowing that you are never parted in the beating of your heart. May the God in you, the divine image to which you are made, see the God in me and all of the wonderful souls that will cross our paths in the days that lie ahead. Amen.